Hello and welcome, or welcome back if you've been here before. This is the last in the series of videos that follows me from the northeast of England to the northeast of Bulgaria. This time I'm going to compress the last few days of my trip into the one video. That's mainly because most of the roads I was on were big dual carriageways and really boring. I'll also share with you what it all cost, which is slightly scary. And now the end is near. And you can think yourselves lucky I'm not going to sing any more of that. Anyhow, this is the first of 3 days that this video covers, and the only one that I have any significant footage for. There are a few reasons for that. First, I was using a GoPro Hero 7, and at the end of this section it began to overheat and fail. You can see that because it started to throw odd colours in patches on some of the video. Another point, I thought I was going to be hitting the auto routes imminently, so I didn't bother changing to the other GoPro, a Hero 8. I sort of regret that, as the departmental roads through Jura near Gex were absolutely wonderful. I nearly turned round to ride them again and film them for you. So I suppose the main reason there is less footage is galloping laziness. But I blame the auto routes. From Saint-Jean-de-Maurienne I jumped onto the autoroute, the A43, until I got to Saint-Pierre-d'Albigny. I then headed north on the D911 into the Borges region, complete with mountains. This area is a UNESCO Global Geopark and is called the Parc Natural Régional Massif Borges. It includes France's two largest natural lakes, Lac d'Annecy and Lac du Bourget. As a conservation area where they're trying to maintain traditional methods of doing things, it appears very rural with lots of farms. It's also very pleasant to ride through. And so to the thorny question of what it all cost. Bear in mind that I didn't set out to keep an eye on what I spent, so this will be an estimate, but it shouldn't be too far out. Also, that these prices were for May-June 2024. I was away for 27 days, 26 nights. I spent 2 nights on the ferry, going out to and back from Europe. I had 1 night under canvas, 5 nights staying with friends. There were then 11 nights in either hotels or bed and breakfasts, and 7 nights in Airbnbs. I also included the cost of the service for the bike that I paid for in Nice. That was £159 and change, should you want to deduct it from the total. I've included all the meals I paid for, all the drinks, souvenirs, fuel, admission tickets to attractions, and so on. I haven't made any allowance for wear on consumables for the motorbike, like chains, sprockets, tyres, brakes, which is one reason why I'm in two minds about including the cost of the service. They're all things that I would have to pay for at some point. It was just that the service was needed whilst I was away. So, grand total, £2,986.19. That also does include the cost of the ferry, which was £392.25. Other than the service, the Himalayan just needed fuel at a rate of 1 gallon every 80 to 90 miles or so. Generally I chose mid-price accommodation. I could have been comfortable in cheaper accommodation had I searched harder. I could have certainly had spent more on accommodation. Similarly, eating was another area I could have economised, but that would have taken much more effort. All in all, I'm happy enough with the rate of £110.60 per day for an awesome adventure. As I make my syncopated way along the valley bottom and the GoPro slowly cooks itself to death, it's time to introduce you to my last overnight stop on land on this trip, which is Pont-à-Mousson. This is a commune in northeastern France. It's an industrial town, mainly steel, and it all housed a Premonstratensian abbey from the 18th century. It also was the birthplace of Margaret of Anjou, who married Henry VI and so was Queen of England and also nominally Queen of France. The abbey, which was built between 1705 and 1735, was dedicated to Sainte Marie aux Bois, and it served as a seminary and later as a military hospital in 1912. The building was heavily damaged in 1944. The buildings were repaired and restored in 1964 to become a cultural centre and continues to host cultural events, but now also serves as a hotel, and this was where I stayed. The hotel has 71 rooms and it's well worth the stay. I'll also admit that when I arrived, although I had the correct address, I wasn't quite sure how to access the hotel, as it just looked like a historic monument. You can also see from the photographs I was quite taken by the elegant interior. Okay, last push to the port, and, yet again, another day that didn't go to plan. What was the plan? I'd left myself a reasonably short distance to cover, so I thought I'd use the autoroute to cross the built-up industrial northeast of France, before crossing into Luxembourg and Belgium. Then I would stop in Dinant, and at about lunchtime, so I have time for a nice meal, before taking some smaller wriggly roads across the Ardennes. Once the uplands had flattened out, I'd pick up the motorway again to make up some time so I could enjoy a leisurely meal before boarding the boat. A lovely plan. But first of all, the weather intervened. As I was riding north, I could see I was heading towards a grey wall. I stopped at the services at the point where I was just about to get dripped on, and dripped on mightily. After I'd had a pause and found my wet weather gear, the weather was so foul that I didn't bother with the sat-nav. I rejoined the autoroute. Ever the optimist, I did go to Dinant, which, by the way, was the birthplace of Adolphe Sax, inventor of the saxophone. I know this because they were having a celebration and the place was littered with brightly coloured 6-foot-tall saxophones. However, it was also tipping it down, so I abandoned the idea of using smaller roads and hit the autoroute again. The rain got worse, so I just carried on until I reached the port and the boat. I seem to recall that night I had a pretty grotty meal on the boat and went grumpily to bed. And just like that, I'm back in Hull and ready to make the familiar trip back across the Wolds. If you haven't guessed from what I've said in these videos, this was an amazing trip. Were I to do it again, I'd make quite a few changes. But that's why we, or at least I, make these trips, to learn, to push the envelope a little. This trip reminded me that areas that are not big ticket tourist ones can be absolutely lovely. It also reminded me that even tourist hotspots will have quiet areas and be beautiful. It seems that the broad-rumped, Nikon-tufted tourist doesn't like to stray far. I hope you've enjoyed this and the other videos. It would be great if this inspires you to do something similar. As you can see, you don't need the latest greatest equipment, just an idea of somewhere to go and some free time. If you have enjoyed this video, do give it a like. Consider subscribing and hitting the bell icon so that you're alerted when I make more content. Thanks again for watching. Bye for now.